Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. With the Season 4 update here in Warzone, we of course got a brand new weapon balancing and meta update, buffing and nerfing various different weapons, adding in some new guns. And that of course means we've got the full meta update to break down. We've obviously already gone through, talked a little bit about what this meta update means for the general competitiveness across the board. We've broken down some of the best loadouts as well, but I do always like to go through and adjust our meta tier list here on COD Community with the absolute go-to guns you want to be rocking right now. Obviously everyone's got their own individualized preference for the best weapons in the game. What I rock on the AK might be a little bit different than what you rock on it. Same deal with the C9, the SWAT 5.56, etc. But I do like to give this as a solid baseline of, hey, if you're looking to level up some guns, or you want the guns that you want to build out for yourself, but you want to know what's good, this gives you a nice little rundown of what is considered the absolute best, the best in a certain category, what's more so in the general conversation, then what's more so competitive, usable but not super great, and then what you really just want to avoid using, that's down here towards the trash category. So first up here on COD Community, I will have the full tier list linked down in the description below. By the way, we've got some new guns to rank, the FFAR, then also the LC10. Luckily, these are two very easy drop-ins because they're both absolute meta. The FFAR, whether you want to use it for mid to long range as a primary, or even better for sniper support, this is an absolute meta choice easily. And the LC10 is as well one of the fastest TTK options in the game, maybe the new #1 SMG, if I'm being honest with you guys. Thing is crazy. So two pretty easy selections there for the new weapons. We of course though then have all the weapon updates that I want to rock through as well. I've got my handy dandy list here off to the sides. We can go through one by one with each weapon change and see how it impacts the weapon itself on the overall tier list. Hey there, so super early on post edit, Zach here. Originally this video was planned to go live before the SX Model 07 dropped, but with different updates, various other things we had to cover, it got pushed back a bit. Now of course that marksman is out, and I wanted to make sure this list was as up to date as possible. So with the S6, this is more so a contender. Really, it's a niche weapon, if you will, because it's a marksman that really is behaving like a shotgun with extended range. If you can one shot within that first damage range, then it's a super strong weapon. But beyond that, it's very weak by comparison to other full auto weapons. They're going to be way more dependable and just overall reliable. So you can get by with using this in a competitive way for sure if you know what you're doing, but it's also a super high skill gap choice. As we do go through all of this, by the way, if you guys enjoy the video, a like rating is always seriously appreciated, helps grow the channel, and share the video around. And if you're new here, you want to ensure you are always up to date with everything going on in COD, no better place than right here, so feel free to hit that sub button and turn on those post notifications. So essentially every single Black Ops 6 rifle with the Season 4 update got a velocity buff, which kind of just enhances it over the mid to long range. For instance, the AK-74 got one. It's still going to be an absolute meta choice for the mid to long range. It's probably the closest one to dropping down just into the general meta conversation because it is a little bit more difficult to use than a lot of these other options. But if you can handle the recoil, it's got an insane TTK, and it's going to feel like it hits even better over range now with that velocity buff. One that's actually not a meta option that is going to be a little bit better feeling is the aims. The TTK here is just a tad bit too slow to be matched up against some of these other absolute meta choices, but still really good. It also got a velocity buff, so that's going to be feeling better. The AS Val got a velocity buff as well. The damage per mag on this one is really the only thing that holds it back a little bit in terms of being an absolute meta choice. Definitely one that is very, very close, I think, to jumping up into that absolute meta category though. CR56 AMAX, obviously a meta choice, also got a velocity buff. They did rework the recoil a little bit. They actually nerfed the recoil, but it's not unusable by any means. Thing still hits like a truck. The Cypher got a velocity buff. That's feeling even better, so no change there. The GPR is honestly overdue for a climb up into the absolute meta category, whether you're rocking this for sniper support as a mid to long range rifle. This is one of the easiest guns to use in the entire game. It feels fantastic. The Kilo and the Krig each got velocity buffs as well. The Kilo though in specific did also see a slight recoil nerf. It's still insanely easy, not something that's going to knock it out of the absolute meta category. Most Black Ops 6 rifles right now you could get away with using, depending on whether you want low recoil, high damage, sniper support. All of them are going to be insane. Mostly all. The Model L is another one that's TTK, is just a little bit too slow to be considered absolute meta, but it did also get a velocity buff. It's going to be feeling a little bit better over range. And the poor XM4, probably the worst Black Ops 6 rifle. It also got a velocity buff, but it doesn't change its damage being insanely underwhelming ever since they nerfed it last. So that one is staying in the general contenders category. Now we also got some interesting SMG updates. There were a lot of damage and a lot of range buffs here. So for instance, the C9 range is even better. It was already arguably the #1 SMG SMG in the game before the LC10 was added in, and now the range is even better. That's insane. The C9 is going to be so good for this upcoming half season, pending what happens in Season 4 Reloaded. This thing is nice. The Jackal also got some interesting updates. It got a better range now. It also got a torso buff and an ADS speed buff. Its damage is still just a little bit behind some of these other top tier SMGs though, like the C9, the LC10, for instance, the Ladra. It is going to be reliable and you can absolutely get away with using it, but there is a gap in between it and the absolute meta, but it's going to be feeling better. Now, somehow the Compact got even better as well. Got a range buff, a lower torso buff, sprint to fire speed, and ADS speed buff as well. Was already one of the fastest killing options in the game. It's now even better. So a lot of absolute meta choices are becoming even better, which is not great for general weapon diversity, you know, compared to the gap that it's creating with general meta options and contenders. But if you like these weapons, they're gonna be better than ever. KSV, another absolute meta choice, got a range buff. It's even better for sniper support, maybe the best SMG for sniper support right now. Thing is nice. The Ladra also got a range buff. You love to see that. It's hard to believe that a gun this good can get even better, and that's an actual weapon update they're making. But lo and behold, that's the case. The PPSH, another absolute meta SMG, got a range buff, a sprint to fire buff, and an ADS buff as well. That actually really helps out the PPSH because it did kind of struggle with its movement stats compared to some of these other options. And its range and its TTK were already insane, so that really brings this thing into like a new, I guess, perspective compared to some of these other choices. Yes, it was absolute meta before, but now it really takes on an identity of its own that can be insanely effective if you're comfortable with the gun. The SOG also got a range buff. I love that because I'm a big fan of the SOG. It just feels really, really good right now. And then we also have a buff to the Tanto, which unfortunately is not going to do much for it. It's already sitting in the contenders category. It got a slightly better range buff, but its rate of fire is real awkward, so it's really unforgiving. If you miss shots, your TTK is basically chalked, and its TTK to begin with is not anything that crazy. So unfortunately, that's a buff that doesn't really do anything for this. We did see a shotgun update to the Maelstrom. This actually ended up seeing a range buff, an ADS buff, and a sprint to fire buff. Was previously just a viable option in that category. Definitely jumps up now into the contenders category with a few other good shotguns, like for instance the Marine SP. An interesting buff there that'll definitely bring that one's efficiency up a little bit. So cool to see if you're a shotgun fan. Now the Fang currently sits in a general meta contender category here. It's a pretty good LMG, just with some awkward recoil that's glaring at first. So you really got to pull down a ton, but it got a close damage nerf. Not super relevant because you're not using this in the close range, but it got a range buff, a lower torso nerf, and then a movement buff, so it's going to be more aggressive. Kind of a linear change just because they did so many different things for it, but it being better over range is what's going to be the most important takeaway there in my opinion, because it already has a pretty competitive TTK, and now that's going to be a little bit more effective when you're fighting mid to long range. So going to stay in the meta contender category there just because of its overall feel as an LMG. Then we also saw several other LMG updates. For instance, the GPMG got a damage nerf but a range buff, but they also nerfed the headshots, and then they buffed the movement, so it's faster but it's weaker, but it's got better range. Again, sort of a linear change. It's usable for sure, as is the PU-21, which also got a close damage nerf, a range buff, a torso nerf, but then a movement buff. So a little bit up, a little bit down, a little bit up, a little bit down. Kind of equates to being a linear change in terms of its overall effectiveness. They're usable, but they're not going to stand out in any significant way. The XMG, though, is an actual meta contender, and it sits above the rest just because its ease of use, its overall TTK. It did also get a close damage nerf, but then it got a range buff, a headshot nerf, and a torso nerf, then a movement buff as well. Overall, again, kind of a linear change. It's not going to have a huge impact on it. It still does stand above those other options, though, in the LMG category. Now, the AEK sits in the meta contender category because of its aftermarket part. The full auto conversion is really good, but it did get a base fire rate buff on the burst element of it. If we were going off of the burst AEK, it'd be more so in like the viable category. So it's nice that that gets better, but we're more so focused on the full auto mod. That's still the recommended loadout for that. Also, the base SWAT 556, we have it in the absolute meta category because of the Grau conversion, but the base SWAT also got a fire rate buff. That's solid, but you don't want to use the burst version of it. The Grau version is by far the best, option to rock there. And then the AMR Mod 4, currently a meta contender, sees a huge bump up into the absolute meta category here to be on par with some of these other great snipers like the LR762 and the Frostline as well, because it got a one-shot range buff. Its max damage range is now up over 100 meters for a one-shot headshot, which makes this thing a fantastic sniper. It's a little bit slower and heavier and kind of clunky, but if you hit a headshot, none of that matters because the enemy is going to be spectating you or in the gulag, right? The thing is insanely good now for a one-shot headshot range, so nice to see some added diversity there. What I said sort of at the start of this ranking is that because we see so many buffs to all these Black Ops 6 guns, especially like the rifles and the SMGs, and nothing beyond that, Obviously, a lot of the meta contenders are filled with those Season 3 reloaded MW2 and MW3 options that got buffed, like the M4, the MX9, the TAC 56. Those were really close to being in this absolute meta category. Had they gotten the same velocity buffs, had these been toned a little bit more in terms of their damage or their range maybe, or better yet, seen even more buffs to the M4, the TAC, etc., you have a situation where these are then absolute meta. But now with this update, obviously we didn't see a ton of shifting between the categories, but this absolute meta tier now stands much further above the general meta contenders and everything beneath that. So there's a clear separation of these are the best. And it's weird to see this many absolute meta guns. Like, you think the absolute meta is 1 or 2 guns, and if you want to narrow it down to that, it's probably the Krig, the FFAR, the LC10, and the HDR is like the true go-to. Those are above everything. But you have options to outgun the LC10 with a C9, with a Ladra, with a SOG. You have options to outgun the FFAR with, different rifles, the AMAX, the Kilo, depending on your accuracy, the GPR, or if you're focused on sniper support or whatever it is. You have guns with crazy TTKs like the Goblin and the TR2 and the DM10. There's different routes to take absolute meta here, depending on the niche that it's in: long range, close range, sniper support, TTK, low recoil. But it's a defined absolute meta, if that makes any sense. So I'm hoping that we can get more diversity here, rather than the absolute meta being full of Black Ops 6 guns and then everything else being a mixture of the three. There are more MW2 and MW3 guns shifted into the absolute meta here. So we'll have to keep an eye on this list. As always, of course, I'll keep you guys informed and update this as necessary as we see new meta updates and balancing go out. But that's going to wrap things up for this one. If you guys enjoyed, be sure to drop a like on it. And if you're new to the channel, feel free to hit that subscribe button, turn on those post notifications so you can always stay up to date with everything going on in COD. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.